I am so sick and tired of people trying to justify the slaughter of American children on the altar of the National Rifle Association and the profits of the gun industry, and these fools who are arming for a race war in America. Because that's what it is. That's what's going on here. And we need to do something about this. And I think one of the things we need to do about this is to get these guns, particularly the weapons of mass destruction, the guns that are designed for military use, the guns that are designed to kill as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible, as quickly as possible, off the streets. Joe Biden yesterday called for an assault weapon ban. I agree with that. But I don't think we're going to get there until people realize how different these guns are and the damage they do is from what they see in the movies and from what they see on, in the cartoon. Basically, our whole media structure around weapons and whatnot it's cartoonish. And Mamie Till made the decision, Emmett Till's mother made the decision in 1955 to show her son's mutilated body in an open casket. And Jet Magazine had the courage to publish that. I've got a link to the actual picture in my article today. You should see it. And it rightly horrified America and energized, galvanized in many ways an already rapidly growing civil rights movement in the United States. This was 1 year after the Brown v. Board decision, for example. This was a moment of great ferment in America. But, the old saying that a picture is better than 1,000 words is true. Pictures have enormous power. Pictures have changed the course of history. The picture of that 9-year-old girl running down the dirt road in Vietnam with her clothes burned off from napalm had a significant and measurable effect on Americans' perception of what we were doing with napalm in Vietnam. I mean, there's been no shortage of times when pictures have, the abortion movement or the anti-abortion movement. In 1973, the Supreme Court legalized abortion. In 1980, the Protestant hard right, the Jerry Falwell, Franklin Graham hard right, joined up with Ronald Reagan, and who had been a big supporter of abortion rights, by the way, who had signed into law the most liberal abortion law in the country as governor of California, and whose vice president, George Herbert Walker Bush's wife, was an open supporter of Planned Parenthood and the right to abortion. They all got together and said, "Oh, hey, we can politicize this." And then the so-called anti-abortion movement, the so-called pro-life movement, a name, by the way, that they hijacked from the anti-death penalty movement in the mid-1970s. That movement started walking around with pictures of bloody fetuses. Just grotesque pictures. And the news media, repeated them and showed them. And that was the moment, according to people in the so-called pro-life movement, that was the moment that America's opinion about abortion started to change, or at least the opinions of many Americans. Pictures. I think this is the time to do this. Now, I'm not saying that we should just randomly be throwing out pictures. I think that this is something that there should be a meeting of some of the major media outlets, the 3 big television networks, at least the 2 largest newspapers in the country, the Times and the Post, maybe also the LA Times or a few others, Philadelphia Inquirer, Boston Globe. And they should come up with some kind of a standard for this. I mean, you don't want to, this should not be gratuitous, but it should be shocking. It wasn't until we started seeing the bodies coming home from Vietnam that we started really going, what? I mean, we did this with tobacco. Remember the tobacco ads that showed the guy with missing half his jaw? That was in the 90s. That led to that tobacco lawsuit that shut down the tobacco industry from marketing to kids and got tobacco out of vending machines and off shelves where kids could get them. Remember drunk driving? Mothers Against Drunk Driving? They started running ads showing people, dead people in cars or bloodied people. This is, frankly, I think it's way beyond time. Now, we're dancing up to the edge of it, and that's kind of the good news. Yesterday in the Washington Post, there was an op-ed, or an article, actually. What they did was they recreated the wounds to two of the children who had been shot at Sandy Hook. And this is a paragraph from yesterday's Washington Post. I'm going to read it to you, but which is something I'm wary of doing, but here it is. Because this is in print, this is a word version of the photos I'm calling for. Quote, "A Texas Ranger speaks of bullets that disintegrated a toddler's skull. This explains the lead poisoning that plagues survivors of the shooting in Sutherland Springs, Texas. David Colbath, 61, can scarcely stand or use his hands without pain, and 25-year-old Morgan Workman probably can't have a baby. It explains the evisceration of small bodies, such as that of Noah Ponzer, 6, murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary, and Peter Wang, 15, killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The Post examined the way the bullets broke inside of them, obliterating Noah's jaw and Peter's skull, filling their chests with blood, and leaving behind gaping exit wounds." Back in 1996, there was a horrible violent mass shooting in Tasmania. Again, I mentioned this yesterday, but it bears repeating. Tasmania is one of the Australian states. It's an island just off the southern coast of Australia, but it's part of Australia, just like, Hawaii is part of the United States. And, this guy came in with an AR-15, or actually it was a AK-47, I believe, and just slaughtered people in an outdoor cafe. Now, the newspapers didn't explicitly publish the pictures of the dead bodies. A couple of them made them into the news, but those pictures were widely circulated. And the result of that was that John Howard, who was the Prime Minister of Australia at the time, who was to the right of Ronald Reagan. John Howard was a very conservative prime minister. John Howard pushed through their parliament a law banning all semi-automatic weapons in civilian hands, followed up by a gun buyback program that went into effect voluntarily, and over 700,000 people brought in their semi-automatic weapons and got large chunks of cash in exchange for them. And that was 27 years ago. In the decade before that, Australia had experienced multiple mass shootings. In the 27 years since then, they've had two shootings where more than three or four people were killed. That's it. 1996 was Australia's Emmett Till moment. America needs ours, and we need it now. What say you? What do you think?